Which Super Bowl matchups will determine who will raise the Lombardi Trophy? What's going on, BLV football fans? I hope you're excited for the Super Bowl. I am. I'm absolutely pumped. 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs, the best team in the AFC, the best team in the NFC. Great coaching. And the Super Bowl is usually determined by individual matchups. Who is going to win the biggest individual matchups on offense, on defense, on special teams to walk away as a champion? That's what I want to talk about in this video. So, let's get into it. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL content and Super Bowl previews just like this. Typically, I go live. I give you my pick every Wednesday. I figured might as well go live for the people out there that want to watch this live. But I hope you're also watching this after the fact. Let me know in the comment section below your opinion on the biggest matchups and which matchups the Niners need to win the Super Bowl and which matchups the Chiefs need to win the Super Bowl. Already gone through a ton of research, and I want to share it with you. So let's begin with the first matchup, which is the Kansas City Tackles versus the San Francisco 49er edge players. If the 49ers are going to turn their recent defensive performances around against Detroit, against Green Bay, they will have to win this specific matchup, which is Nick Bosa and Chase Young and Randy Gregory taking on the tackles of Donovan Smith and Jawaan Taylor of the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the biggest weakness on the Chiefs' offense. Their inability to consistently protect Patrick Mahomes on the edges. Their inability to hold up in pass protection. This didn't really show up as much against the Ravens. The reason that is the Ravens do not, first of all, have great edge rushers. They have kind of guys they've picked up off the street. Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy have seen better days, have been productive, but seen better days. They're certainly not on the level of Nick Bosa, and they're certainly not as athletic or to have as much potential in a single game setting as Chase Young. Now, that being said, they were very good early in that Baltimore game. But as we saw, the Chiefs played from ahead, and they've played from ahead all postseason long. So the question may come, if the Niners do get a lead and Nick Bosa can pin his ears back and get to the quarterback, it's going to be dangerous. When looking into it statistically, Donovan Smith and Jawaan Taylor have been one of the worst tackle duos in football this year. Donovan Smith, he has 47 pressures on the season. That's the 10th most of all tackles. Jawaan Taylor has allowed 54 pressures on the season. That's bottom 5 in the NFL. Jawaan Taylor has also allowed 12 hits, bottom 3 in the NFL, and 5 sacks, which ranks 46th in the NFL. Smith has only allowed 2 sacks, but again, a notable amount of pressures, and both of them, especially Jawaan Taylor, have taken a ton of penalties, which was one of the storylines that Niner fans regretfully would look back at Super Bowl 54 and say, why did Nick Bosa not get a couple more calls in that game? He definitely could have. But one of the differences between Super Bowl 54 and 58 is that the Chiefs in that game featured arguably the best tackle duo in the NFL that year with Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. Now, the weakness of their offensive line happens to be where their best defensive player plays, which is Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa ranks second in the NFL in pressures with 110. He had 16 sacks on the season and third in pass rush grade according to Pro Football Focus. Chase Young actually had a very productive season this year. He's just really been struggling with stopping the run. More on that later. 10th in pressures with 70, 10 sacks, and 36th in pass rushing grade. They'll also rotate in Randy Gregory on the edge and maybe potentially Eric Armstead on rundowns. We'll get to that maybe a little bit later. But this is the first matchup that I think is absolutely crucial. If the Niners are going to win, especially close this game in the fourth quarter, they're going to have to win this matchup. If the Chiefs want Mahomes to remain clean and ability to throw the ball down the field, especially, they're going to have to hold up in pass protection. So this is a massive, massive, massive matchup. And then you also factor in that Joe Thuney most likely will be out of this game. He's currently doubtful with a torn pec. So he is the best pass blocker according to Pro Football Focus at the guard position this season. That's a massive loss that will also influence the middle of the pocket, which will help, the Niners maybe get a push up the middle and help their edge guys have less resistance or less help. You would think that the Chiefs might chip towards Nick Bosa's side, so it's even more crucial that Chase Young shows up in this game on passing downs. The second matchup that is absolutely huge in the Super Bowl is the run offense of the 49ers and the Chiefs' run defense. The 49ers, a lot of people made it a big deal, including myself, that the Ravens didn't run the ball against the Chiefs. And the reason that people made that a big deal is because the Chiefs' run defense is really bad. But a lot of people said that the Ravens had the best rushing offense in the NFL. Well, maybe if you factor in the Lamar Jackson ability to run from the quarterback position and the quarterback design run game, maybe that's true. But in fact, the 49ers have had the best rushing offense this year, according to many EPA advanced metrics. You look at the 49ers offense, they ranked first in rushing EPA this year, first in rushing success rate this year. You look at yards per attempt, fourth in the NFL, and rushing offensive grade, according to PFF, first. Now, on the flip side, Kansas City's defense is phenomenal against the pass, and I've claimed that they are the second best defense in all of football, only behind those Ravens. And that's mostly due to their pass defense. But their rushing defense this year has been very susceptible. You've seen it in games like the Bills game, as of late in the divisional round, where the Bills were able to take it to the Chiefs and run it down their throat. That's especially going to be the case now that Charles Omenihu will be out of this game with a torn ACL. Kansas City's defense, 28th in EPA this year against the run compared to the 49er first. Number one ranked rushing offense. Success rate 15th, so middling. 24th in yards per attempt and 16th in run defense grade. So the Chiefs all the way around have really struggled with the run, which is why the Ravens not running the ball was extremely shocking. Even if the Chiefs were putting 8 people in the box, they were still able to run the ball. They just, for whatever reason, didn't decide to do it. Don't expect Kyle Shanahan to do the same. Expect him to run the ball, especially to the left, where Trent Williams is at left tackle, Kyle Juszczyk is at fullback, George Kittle plays tight end. They're going to overpower that side, run outside zone with Christian McCaffrey, and they're going to run right at the replacement of Charles Omenihu. Charles Omenihu lined up on that side across from the left tackle. It's going to be interesting to see what the Chiefs decide to do and who they put there in his spot now that he's out. But that's a massive matchup. And if the Niners are able to run the ball, that's going to keep Mahomes off the field. That's going to allow them to control the game. And that's going to allow them to control their pace, which they have not been able to do the last couple of playoff matchups. Now, on the flip side, a key matchup, in my opinion, for the Chiefs offense is their rushing offense against the Niners' rushing defense. And why this is so critical, in my opinion, why I think this game might be won in the run game, is because whichever offense can control the game and keep that defense on the field, I think it's going to be able to possess the ball, keep the other offense off the field, and kind of dictate the pace of the game. I especially think this is the case if the Niners are able to run the ball, but I also feel like if the Chiefs are able to run the ball and attack the biggest weakness of the 49ers, that's going to open up everything else in their offense. Because the Niners have really struggled against the run in the playoffs. We've seen the Packers run it all over them, Detroit run it all over them, but those were top 10 rushing offenses. So how will the Chiefs fare given the fact that they're not quite that good in the running game. This is obviously a critical matchup that has to be won by the Chiefs. It's really hard to tell you whether they're going to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage the way that Detroit and Green Bay did. Because like I said, Green Bay and Detroit were upper echelon, especially Detroit, in the running game. But the Chiefs, when you look at them statistically, they're kind of average, right? Both teams, yards per attempts, offensive and defensively, rank 13th and 14th. Run defense grade for the 49ers ranked 15th. Run offense grade for the Chiefs ranked 10th. EPA-wise, the Chiefs have an advantage at 18th best rushing offense, while the Niners were 26th in run defense this year. And success rate, the Niners were actually better, 24th, compared to the Chiefs' 26th ranked rushing offense. So the Chiefs have been very spotty running the ball. That being said, though, they've committed to running the ball as of late. Pacheco has had 2 20-plus carry games in a row. He is their main ball carrier, and he is going to get the rock. And he is an explosive player. He's a little spotty in terms of his ability to see and read the right hole, but when he hits it, he explodes. He's powerful, he's hard to tackle, and he's very fast, and he can make explosive plays. The Chiefs tend to like to run in between the guards. They like to run in between the tackles. But I will say that there is an opportunity for Andy Reid over the next 2 weeks to put together something where they're able to get to the edge where the Niners have had so much trouble. So when looking at Pacheco, he struggled against the Ravens, 2.8 yards per carry on 24 carries for 68 yards. Not his best outing. He was much more productive against the Bills, 97 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. He was okay against Miami, 24 carries for 89 yards, 4.1 yards per carry. So that's kind of a good range. You know, you would think that the Ravens, they would have had more success running the ball because the Ravens were kind of like iffy against the run. The Bills, I feel like they had a lot of success because of they were able to overpower the Bills. But you also must keep in mind that without Joe Thuney, you know, that might also impact their ability to run the ball. But I do think that Joe Thuney, you know, overall is probably going to be more impactful in the pass game just because he is legitimately the best guard in the NFL at pass blocking. But he's a good run blocking guard and maybe a little bit more replaceable in that area of the game. But that's why it also makes it so crucial that the Chiefs are able to run the ball, because if they're not able to run the ball, then the Niners can resort to playing more, you know, coverage defense, take away the passing lanes of Mahomes, and then be able to rush the quarterback, which is what they want to be able to do. So running the ball is going to be critical if the Chiefs want to win this game. At least having some sort of balance, in my opinion. The next matchup is, of course, we've got to talk about Travis Kelce versus the San Francisco linebackers and the San Francisco defense in general. So breaking down how the Niners played against tight ends this season, the 49ers allowed the 6th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends this season. They are known for their middle-of-the-field coverage and middle-of-the-field defense, thanks to their linebackers, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. Fred Warner, first in passer rating allowed this season at the linebacker position. Greenlaw, second in reception percentage at the linebacker position. Warner ranked 4th in coverage grade, according to PFF. Greenlaw ranked 8th in coverage grade. So they're very athletic. They're very good in coverage. And they likely, if the Niners especially are in zone, will be covering Kelce in the middle of the field. And if it's man, it'll likely be Fred Warner's responsibility to cover Travis Kelce. But, you know, there are some stats that would suggest maybe Kelce can have more success than you would think. The Niners did allow, you know, the 11th most receptions to tight ends, and they did allow the 18th most yards. They also overall, you know, tend to give some yards and some receptions, but are really good at keeping them out of the end zone. They're tied for second, only 3 touchdowns allowed. When you look back to the Niners this season against tight ends, they've pretty much played all the other great tight ends in the NFL off the top of my head. So they definitely have experience playing a lot of good tight ends this year. So that will come in handy. The middle of the field is also something you have to talk about when you talk about how successful a tight end can be. Middle of the field in the regular season, the Chiefs ranked 14th in EPA per attempt. overall decent, not spectacular. Middle of the field in the playoffs, they actually were much, much better. So that's been a crucial aspect of their offense, has been the improvement of throwing the ball in the middle of the field. Now, the Niners defense ranked first in EPA and success rate against passes over the middle of the field this season. So it's going to be a great matchup that obviously will decide drive starters, as we saw it against the Ravens. It will determine third down conversions, fourth down conversions. We saw Kelce have a couple clutch plays against the Ravens in the AFC Championship. And Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, and Tashawn Gibson will have to be up to the task in that regard. So, huge matchup, the Travis Kelce matchup. Next up, we've got another Chief offensive matchup taking on potentially a one-on-one matchup on the outside. This is at least, maybe a little bit more of a lesser matchup, a secondary matchup, I guess you would say, but it could potentially be bigger depending on the game plan of the 49ers. Charvarius Ward taking on Rashee Rice. And if you're an opponent right now taking on the Chiefs, there's almost no way you don't go into a 2-week, having an extra week to prepare and say, well, they have 3 elements to their offense that's very successful. They run to Pacheco, they throw to Rice, they throw to Kelce. So you must put your best coverage players on these players. And Charvarius Ward has been one of the best corners in football over the past few years, including playing for the Chiefs, but also with the 49ers. This season, Charvarius Ward is ranked 11th in reception percentage at the corner position. He actually has faced the 9th most targets in the NFL, 100 targets this year, and still ranks with a 64.3 passer rating allowed. He had 5 picks and the most pass breakups in the NFL this season. Very good player, man or zone. When it comes to Rashee Rice, he had a really good rookie season and has had a really solid playoffs. In the regular season, 79 catches for 938 yards, 7 touchdowns. He had 20 receptions in 3 games in the playoffs, 223 yards and 1 touchdown. He's very good with the ball in his hands. He's one of the best yards after catch players in football right now. And a lot of that has come against zone coverage. When it comes to playing against man coverage, his yards per route run is 37th in the NFL. So not bad, but not good either. So if the Niners do go to man, I feel like Ward would have the edge over Rice. But if they go to zone, I do expect Rice to be able to find some spots, and especially on those crossers and those underneath routes where he's able to take those passes for extra yards after the catch. Guys, if you haven't already, we're live. Gronk spike that like button. Show some support for the BLV. It is Super Bowl time, baby. Super Bowl 58. Shout out to everybody in the chat right now. Let's go to the next one. We've got the Kansas City defense versus the San Francisco weapons. This one's obviously one of the biggest matchups of the entire Super Bowl. The Niners have, it's no secret, probably the best set of weapons in the NFL. From Brandon Ayuk as the X receiver to Debo as the Z receiver, or Jawan Jennings, or you've got, George Kittle at tight end, or you've got Christian McCaffrey at running back. There's so many different guys that can catch the football and make plays. And I'm specifically talking about the passing game here with the matchups. You've got, on the other side, one of the best secondaries, specifically in their ability to mix up coverages, confuse quarterbacks, play man, play zone, play whatever they want to do. And I think, the Chiefs were able to get away with playing a lot of heavy fronts, play man coverage, be able to beat up the receivers of the Ravens, because I think they had edges across the board. I think Sneed's better than OBJ at this point in his career. I think McDuffie, is a good matchup for Zay Flowers, or I think they had enough in the secondary to be able to match up with some of these guys. But when it comes to the Niners, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Why? Well, you look at some of their rankings against man coverage this season. Christian McCaffrey is the 5th best running back against man in yards per route run. Kittle is legitimately the best tight end in the NFL against man this year in yards per route run. Brandon Ayuk is 6th in the NFL against man this season. He is an excellent route runner, and he always tends to get open in these situations. Jawan Jennings is an excellent secondary receiver, ranking 41st against man in yards per route run. The guy that actually is the weakest in yards per route run against man, he is not really their go-to player against man, is Debo Samuel. which is kind of interesting. He's more of their zone beater or kind of like their quick pass option. He also gets the ball in the running game, but he's not really their man beater. Their man beaters are McCaffrey on option routes out of the backfield, Kittle at tight end, Ayuk on the outside, and sometimes Jennings depending on the matchup. But Kansas City is also 21st in DVOA against running backs in the passing game. So they have struggled a little bit with running backs. Christian McCaffrey should be able to make some noise out of the backfield. James Cook did that for Buffalo in a couple of the games this season. That's just one that draws to mind. So look out for that. The Chiefs were really good against receivers overall this season, though. They only allowed one 100-yard receiver before Zay Flowers. Interesting enough, in the AFC Championship game. So they've allowed 2 all season long. The only one 100-yard game against wide receiver ones. And then the Chiefs against wide receivers this year, fourth least amount of yards, fourth best in yards, 6th least receptions, 3rd least touchdowns, and 2nd least amount of fantasy points. So they were very good at limiting wide receivers this year, thanks to their cornerback play. It'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs are able to match up with the 2-back set of the Niners having, their typical base formation of Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, Juszczyk, and McCaffrey, and how they're able to match up with their weakness in the run defense department, but also being able to get their matchups in the passing game. They might have to, maybe give up a matchup against Kittle or give up a matchup against McCaffrey in order to get their proper matchups on the outside. They might have to overcompensate for their lack of success against the run, pack the box, and that means playing more man coverage. And in that case, like I just discussed, that's going to really fall on, okay, who's winning those matchups? Is Kittle able to break away from Justin Reed, or is Reed locking him up? And is Ayuk winning his matchup on the outside? Of course, with Kyle Shanahan, you'll have a lot of different motions, a lot of different condensed formations. That might allow Spags to bring some blitzes if the receivers are packed into the box from the DB positions, like the Ravens did in that game against the 49ers on Monday night. But it also might allow, if you send a blitz, there's a quick screen to Debo, and he's gone, and he breaks a tackle, and he's gone for 60 yards. So watch out for that as well. A lot of different things that could really hurt the Chiefs, but also help the Chiefs. If this is a huge matchup, if the Chiefs are able to play man successfully, that will allow them to stop the run. But if they're not able to play man successfully, and let's say Ayuk is winning consistently on the outside, or Kittle is consistently winning, whatever it is, then they're going to have to maybe play a little bit more too deep and a little bit more soft coverage, which will allow the Niners to just run the ball. So this is a huge swing matchup in the game, in my opinion. Next up, you've got Chris Jones versus the 49er offensive line. I specifically want to feature the interior offensive line here of the 49ers. Chris Jones was, in my opinion, the MVP of Super Bowl 54. It goes way under the radar. He had the batted pass late. He was just an absolute terror for the 49ers to block in that first Super Bowl. And part of that was, Garoppolo's ability to handle pressure. I think Purdy's better at that. But also, winning on the inside. Chris Jones is one of the best pass rushers in all of football. We know this. Second most pressures at his position this year, only behind Aaron Donald. The most sacks at his position, tied, and the first most amount of hits this season. When it comes to the matchups, he'll be taking on an interior offensive line of Banks, Brendel, and Feliciano. Feliciano has actually been a really bright spot for the 49ers since taking over. He's actually ranked as the 5th best guard in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus's grading this year. Brendel is ranked as the 18th best center, and he's been really good in the playoffs. He has not allowed a sack. He's only allowed 2 pressures so far in the playoffs in 2 games. And Banks ranks 53rd overall this season, so not the best. When it comes to the pass blocking stats, I didn't really want to get too far deep because Feliciano has not played all the games and all that stuff. But I definitely would say Chris Jones has the edge in this matchup. But the interesting thing to me is if, with Omenihu out, there's another matchup that I think the Niners definitely might need some help in pure passing situations, which we'll get to next. But they're going to have to double Chris Jones every single chance they get in these passing situations. And the thing that allows them to do that is having Trent Williams on one side, where Trent Williams never needs help from anyone. So that definitely helps them double Chris Jones as much as humanly possible. The other factor that helps them do that is the fact that the Chiefs don't have great depth on the D-line or like great other interior defensive lineman pass rushing types. Unless they move Dana inside, but Dana will likely be the guy that's replacing Omenihu on the edge. Dana's had some success rushing from the interior. Remember that Bengals game in the AFC Championship last year? He's pretty good at that, but the fact that Omenihu is out, what does that mean for what they're going to do, in terms of their pass rushing situation? So that's pretty interesting. And just the depth overall, I'm not really sure who's going to step up in those situations for them. But Chris Jones, you're going to have to get hands on him and protect him. And that's where you can impact Brock Purdy the most. If you're able to push that pocket and get pressure in his face, you're able to successfully, kind of rattle him and make him make some of those bad throws or interceptions as we've seen in some games this season. Next up, we've got the other matchup that's crucial for the 49ers offensive line and the pressure of the Chief defense. That's Colton McKivitz versus George Karlaftis. These two will see each other pretty much the entire game. George Karlaftis largely lines up across from the right tackle, and Colton McKivitz is the right tackle of the 49ers, ranking 67th this season at the tackle position. He's been one of the worst tackles in pass protection this year, allowing 9 sacks and 55 pressures, both bottom 5 in football. That being said, he actually had a really good game against Aiden Hutchinson, weirdly enough, but yeah, he has been pretty bad this year. George Karlaftis is not as good as Aiden Hutchinson, but he's also pretty darn good. 12th most pressures in the NFL this year, 14 sacks. He is only 75th in pass rushing grade, though, so some of his numbers are due to volume, where he plays a lot of snaps. So Karlaftis is not somebody that I would expect just to totally dominate this game, but there will be a few snaps where he's able to win and get in the face of Brock Purdy, and I definitely expect, because Chris Jones will be taking up most of the attention, this is the guy that needs to cause havoc for the Chiefs in order for them to get to Purdy and make him make mistakes. But at the same time, this is all correlated, right? Because if the Niners are able to run the ball and stay out of 3rd and 8 for most of the game, well, that's going to allow the Niners to not really have to deal with this matchup as much and allow Purdy to kind of have some easier dropbacks and some easier passing plays and potentially some play action as well, which we'll get more into play action and why that could be successful with the 49ers in our full game preview. I think that's something that they'll definitely try to attack. The second last matchup I want to discuss here is Brock Purdy versus the blitz. Spagnuolo is known for blitzing, and he's known for his disguises, and he's known for his confusing of quarterbacks, and that's all great, but it's also difficult to do when you're facing the quarterback that is the best against the blitz this season. And it's not really a Brock Purdy stat. It's more of a 49er offense stat, right? Spagnuolo, 5th highest blitz percentage in the NFL this year. He also sends 5-man pressures, which isn't a blitz in my opinion. It's 6 or more. You want to overload the line. That is a blitz. 5-man pressure is 5-man pressure, sending it at 60%. I think 5-man pressure might be the way to go if you're Spags in a lot of cases, because at least you can create one-on-ones. Like, you can create a one-on-one for Karlaftis. You can create a one-on-one for Chris Jones. Sending the extra guy might lead you to lose some of those outside matchups, like, let's say, Kittle against Justin Reed, or McCaffrey out of the backfield, or, Ayuk against Sneed, something to that degree where you could be hit by a big play if Debo just breaks a tackle and he's gone, or Kyle has a good man beater, then you're in trouble. But I would say that 5-man pressures would likely be the way to go in passing situations, kind of like what we saw from Detroit and Green Bay early in those games against the 49ers. Luckily for the Niners, they've kind of seen everything anyone can throw at them at this point, the way they've been down in games. That being said, Purdy has been the best against the blitz this season. He ranks 1st in yards per attempt, 1st in touchdowns, 1st in big-time throw percentage, 1st in passer rating, and 1st in EPA against the blitz. He's also, 8 for 14, 114 yards against Detroit's blitzes, which, that's pretty good numbers in my opinion. In terms of the down usage for blitzes, Chiefs tend to blitz the most on 2nd down. They rank number 1 on 2nd down at sending the blitz. number 3 on first down, and number 6 on third down. So it's not just a third down thing. Actually, third down, they send the least amount of blitzes. The interesting thing about Spags' blitzes as well is he tends to play still a lot of too high, cover 2, cover 6, quarters coverages. For those of you that don't know it, those are too high coverages. And he tends to kind of try to confuse quarterbacks by taking those big plays away. So it's going to be on Shanahan to give Purdy those answers going into this game against the blitz in the middle of the field or quickly to the flat. And I think the interesting thing will be is how does Spags want to play too high structures or too high coverages while blitzing? That likely is going to open up the middle of the field, which is where Brock Purdy and the Shanahan offense thrive. So that's something that Spags might have to change. Maybe we'll see him go to more single high coverages in this game. But that's a huge matchup. If Purdy's able to eat against the blitz and create some explosive plays, then the Niners could very well win this game, because as we've seen, the Chiefs have not been an explosive offense this year, which is the final matchup I want to discuss. Steve Wilks and his game plan against the Chiefs offense. Steve Wilks has taken a lot of criticism from 49er fans and 49er faithful, the Bang Bang Niner gang, whatever they call themselves. But, if he's able to put together a really nice game plan here, I honestly think that this is kind of the Achilles heel that could turn into the reason the Niners win. I think the reason they have been kind of dominated in the first halves of the 2 playoff matchups is because Wilks has come out with rather too conservative of a plan, or he's just been kind of outcoached in the first half. And Andy Reid has been extremely good on scripted drives. The Chiefs have been extremely good on, first quarter, second quarter possessions in the playoffs, and they've been able to cash in with touchdowns. So Wilks' early game plan, maybe he goes with what worked against Detroit in that second half, being a little bit more aggressive, being a little bit more physical with the receivers, playing a little bit more man coverage. If that's the case, I think, personally, that's the way to go. As you look at these receivers for the Chiefs, and they're certainly not great against man coverage. Watson ranks 17th, their best receiver against man coverage. That's kind of spotty. We talked about Rice being 37th. MVS is 50th. Even Kelce is not great at only 7th for the tight end position. So maybe a little bit more man coverage. With Lenore and Ward, you definitely can get away with it. And then potentially, I think another adjustment that I'd like to see, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'd like to see from Wilks is maybe throwing Armstead on the edge to help against the run, to set the edge on the opposite side of Nick Bosa. The good thing for Wilks is that the strong side of the offensive line running the ball for the Chiefs is the right side with Jawan Taylor and Smith. Now that Tooney's out on the left side, it's going to be harder to run to that side with Donovan Smith and a backup guard. So even if Chase Young's in there, it might be a little bit tougher. But if you throw Armstead on the other side and move Kinlaw to the middle, that's your best 4, in my opinion, on run downs. And I do think that would be the way I'd play it if I was the defensive coordinator. Maybe get a little bit bigger on the defensive line to help you against the run in those situations. But just a few things that Wilks maybe needs to do early in this game to throw the Chiefs off, to maybe get a stop in a spot where a lot of teams have not been able to stop the Chiefs as of late. The Chiefs have gone down and scored against Buffalo, gone down and scored against Miami, gone down and scored against Baltimore. And all of those teams, in my opinion, maybe played a little bit too conservatively. They kind of played Mahomes like Mahomes 3 years ago. Okay, let's sit back. Let's play zone. Let's let Mahomes dink and dunk and dink and dunk. And Mahomes has proven at this point he can be surgical. He can take the short passes. He's willing to throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage. And the Chiefs have played into that, and then they've mixed in the run with that. Maybe the way to go early in these games is let's get after him. After all, you do have the best offense in the NFL, so even if you give up a big play, okay, our offense just gets back out there in quicker fashion instead of the other team taking up 6 minutes, 7 minutes on the clock. So personally, if I was Wilks, I'd be playing into the fact that the Niners have scored 30 points 10 times this season, and the Chiefs have only scored 30 points 3 times this year. And it was against the Chargers, the Bears, and the Raiders. So, I think Wilkes is going to have to come in with his best game plan of the season. We'll see if he's up to the task. And then we've seen him make some great adjustments in these games against the Packers and the Lions. I think they did play much better in the second halves. The Chiefs have played much worse in the second halves. But Andy Reid with 2 weeks to prepare is a scary proposition. And Mahomes is going to have answers early in these games for what the Niners like to do most. And when you're a team like the Niners, who everyone knows what you play quarters, you know, like you do the same thing all the time. If you switched it up all of a sudden, that might give you an edge that the Chiefs didn't foresee. So that's the final matchup that I think is fascinating. Those are the matchups that I think are going to decide Super Bowl 58 and whether the Niners or the Chiefs are going to take this big game on a Super Sunday. Gronk, spike the like button, guys, if you haven't already. Subscribe. It's Mitch. Let's say hello to the people in the chat. We'll get to my prediction when we get to my pick. That will be next Wednesday, guys. Shout out to James. Brian says the Chiefs' Willie Gay will be back for the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy is going to have a long day. All right, we'll see, man. I think Brock Purdy, the Chiefs have not seen an offense this good or this explosive all year long. There's no comparing this unit to any other unit in football. So the Chiefs are going to have to play their best they've ever played on defense this year. So it goes both ways. Definitely think Brock Purdy can have a bad game. We've seen that before this season. But we've also seen the kid come up with a big play after big play after big play. Shout out to Big Al. Shout out to Cassie in the chat. Tori in the chat. Rob, what's up, brother? Thank you so much for watching. Conspiracy. I don't think that Kittle will be asked to block a lot because I don't think the Chiefs' pass rush is really all that overwhelming in terms of their front four unless they're blitzing like 6 or 7 people. Just because, you know, you really like compare the Packer pass rush to the Chief pass rush, 4 guys for 4 guys. I'd probably go with the Packers. If you said, you know, the Lions is probably pretty comparable to the Chiefs, but they did well against the Lions in a script where they were playing from behind all game. So that's another huge thing. What would this game look like if the Niners actually get a lead? Which is somewhere where the Chiefs haven't been all postseason and the Niners haven't been all postseason. So, yeah, Super Bowl is going to be interesting. A lot of good matchups in this game. 2 best teams in the NFL in football. We'll see you in the next video, guys. I'll be doing as many videos as I can think of, and I'll try to go live as many times as well. Thanks, guys. See you later. Gronk, spike the like button. Subscribe. Peace.